Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another edition of the Underhive Wars. This is our series of battle reports dedicated to our Necromunda Dominion campaign for our turf war over Sector 7, and this is battle report number 20. It is a standout scenario that is fought between my friend Scream of the Emo as well as myself. My friend Scream of the Emo is bringing the Red Faction and the Genestealer Cults, and I'm bringing the Jury of House Cawdor. Now this one's actually kind of a really interesting fight because you can kind of consider this a championship fight because both of our gangs have won every single scenario in our campaign so far. We've had not a single defeat between the both of us. We're both 4-0, and now we're facing off in a good old-fashioned gang fight to see exactly who will reign top dog for the first half of our campaign. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what each of the gangs is bringing, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So with that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so you can see we're playing on a 4x4 table. My friend Scream of the Emo is deployed on the far side of the table, and I'm deployed on the near side of the table. The scenario we're playing on this one is called Standoff. The objective is to take out as many of the enemy as possible, and for every enemy that you put out of action, you earn points. 3 points for leaders, 2 points for champions, as well as 1 point for everybody else. The winner is the one who has the most points by the end of the scenario. For the rewards, the winner earns D6 times 10 credits, while the loser earns D3 times 5. For experience, each fighter who participates in the scenario earns 1 experience point, while the winning gang leader earns 1 additional experience point for themselves. And for reputation, the winner earns 2 points reputation, and both gangs also earn a point reputation for fighting each other against the very first time. Also, if any gang bottles out as well, they suffer 1 point reputation, they lose that as well. So with the scenario rules over, let's go and talk about the battle plan for this one real quick. Alright, so here you see we're playing on a 4x4 table. I'm deployed on the near side of the table. My friend is deployed on the far side of the table. Pretty much what my plan is to kind of assault across the table as quick as I can and try to engage the Red Faction. The reason why is because they have very few members in their gang. I have a lot more. I have numbers on my side. But also another thing that my friend Scream of the Emo has to worry about is that he doesn't have very many long-range attacks. Most of his attacks are mainly pistol-range shots, so about 16 inches is pretty much what he's shooting at for the max. He does have a mining laser in his gang that I do worry about, so that is the only heavy weapon he has. Plus he has an infiltrator, as you can see in the bottom of the screen there. He's got his infiltrating Acolyte Hybrid, I think is what they're called. So he does have that. He also has a Baron, so he's really deadly in close combat. But at the same time, though, I do have numbers, and I actually have a lot more long-range attack options than he does. So that's pretty much my plan is. My plan is to advance across the battlefield, use overwatching from my snipers from the top of the gantry walkway as well as the top of the office building, pick off a couple of those guys, and hopefully I can just mob on him in mass and destroy him that way. And that's pretty much the battle plan I have to worry about for this one. So with the battle plans over with, let's go and talk about deployment real quick. Alright, so right here on the left hand side next to the tank farm is where a majority of my gang is located at. That's my leader as well as his little juvie posse. Up in the middle there in the center of the back, that's Riptor, my leader. He's a gang leader who has mesh armor as well as a bolt gun, a reclaimed auto pistol, chainsaw, as well as a cult icon. And he's also got the commanding presence as well as mentor abilities as well. So if any one of these juvies manages to earn experience, he has to do is do a successful leadership check and they get an additional experience point. And since he has commanding presence as well as a cult icon, he can actually activate all 4 of these guys when they move out, so a pretty powerful ability. Right next to him on the left hand side, that is Tetsuo. That is a juvie who's armed with a flak armor, a reclaimed auto gun, stub gun with dum-dum bullets, as well as a maul. On the right hand side of him, that's VR. He's a ganger who's armed with flak armor, twin reclaimed auto pistols, as well as a strip clip. Up in the front left, that is Reptile. He's a juvie. He's armed with a stub gun with dum-dum bullets and a maul. He's also wearing flak armor. And right next to him on the right, that's Johnny the Juve. He's got a flak armor as well as an auto pistol and a maul. And that pretty much makes up my left-hand deployment on my army. On the center of the battle, from the top level of the gantry walkway, I got 2 more members. In the back, that is Scorpion, who's my gang champion. He's armed with flak armor, a grenade launcher with frag and crack grenades, as well as a reclaimed auto gun. He's also got bolting bicep skill. And right in front of him, that is Jockey. He's another ganger who's armed with flak armor, a reclaimed auto gun, as well as a maul. And my plan for these 2 guys is to have them run down the gantry walkway, providing some overwatching fire for my maneuver elements on the ground. On the right hand side of the gantry walkway is another 3-man fire team. In the back right, that is Lemonhead. He's my champion. He's got mesh armor with a combo weapon, which is an reclaimed auto gun as well as a flamer. He also has a maul as well. He's got the rain of blows ability, so he can fight twice as simple actions. Up in the front, that is Dark Side. He's a ganger who's armed with a sawn-off shotgun as well as a maul. He's also wearing flak armor. And next on the left hand side, that is Mondo. He's another ganger who's armed with flak armor, a reclaimed auto gun as well as a maul. And following my far right, and the far right hand side of my deployment area, in the middle of the battlefield, we're on top of the office building. Up in the front there, that is on the right hand side, that is Stubber. He's my champion. He has mesh armor, a heavy stubber, drop rig, as well as maul. He's got bulging biceps as well. And next on the left hand side, that is Sorter. He's a ganger who's armed with flak armor, a long rifle, reclaimed auto pistol, as well as a drop rig. And these guys' job is to provide some long range cover fire for my gang. And that pretty much makes a deployment for this one. Up next, we're going to talk about the deployment for the Red Faction. So starting in the back center of my deployment area, right at the base of that office building, that is Benjamin Marsh. He's a hybrid Alkalite. He's got a hazard suit as well as auto pistol, respirator, as well as a fighting knife. He's also got a third arm as well. This guy has the infiltrate as well as the backstab skill, so I'm really worried about this guy. This is the same guy who was a terrible monster in the last fight when he fought against the Sleeping Dogs. When he's fighting in the tombs, he took out 3 guys all by himself in close combat, so I am absolutely terrified of this guy, and he's right behind my main battle lines to make things worse. So that's deployment off with his infiltrator. In the far left hand side, right next to the Alexander's department store, is where the majority of his gang is located at. In the back, that is Obed Marsh. That's his cult alpha. He's got a hazard suit, and he's got 3 stub guns with dum-dum bullets as well as a respirator. He has a commanding presence ability, gunfighter skill, as well as a third arm, so this guy is super deadly. He's just kid out for kill. He's also the new Killer Morph model that came out for the Genestealer Cults for Kill Team. Right next to him on the left-hand side, that is Armitage. He's a neophyte hybrid. He has a hazard suit, respirator, as well as a mining laser, as well as a third arm. So because of that, he can move and shoot that weapon as a basic action. So very dangerous in that part. Up in the front on the left-hand side, that is Innsmouth. That is his neophyte hybrid, who's also got a chainsword auto pistol as well, and he's also got a hazard suit. And right next on the right-hand side, that is Johansson. Johansson is his brand new neophyte that we recruited in the last round. He's got a hazard suit, respirator, as well as an auto gun. And that guy also has a third arm as well. Now up in the front, right underneath that little broken walkway, there's his 2 aberrants. On the right hand side, that is Zadok Allen. That is his aberrant who's got mesh armor as well as a power hammer. He's got the unstoppable skill as well as a specialist skill. And next on the left hand side, that is Wilbur Whately. That is his newest aberrant, who's also armed with mesh armor and power hammered. And he's also got the unstoppable skill as well. And that makes up his left hand deployment. In the middle of his deployment in the back, that is Simon Black. He is a hybrid Alkalite as well. He has a hazard suit, auto pistol, fighting knight, respirator, as well as a cult icon. So when this guy activates, he actually activates 2 fighters. He's also got the berserker skill as well as a third arm. Also in that group as well, you on the left-hand side, that is Pikmin. That's his neophyte hybrid who's got a hazard suit, power pick, as well as an auto pistol. And right next to him, that is Arkham, who's also another neophyte hybrid. He's got a head injury, so he has a little bit of minus to his willpower and intelligence, but he also has a power maul as well as an auto pistol. And that pretty much makes up his deployment on the right-hand side. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and Scream of the Emo and I roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so turn number 1 actually goes to Scream of the Emo on this one, so the Genestealer Cults get to go first, and the first thing he decides to do is to charge in Benjamin Marsh, and that guy is an absolute beast. He comes tearing around the corner of that office building and gets directly into close combat with my champion Lemonhead, so because of that, the 2 of them are now in close combat. And Benjamin Marsh is pretty deadly because as a hybrid Alkalite, he already has 2 attacks, plus he has an additional weapon, which is another attack as well, and plus he also has an auto pistol too, which is 4 attacks. Oh, it's not an auto pistol, a third arm, which is 4 attacks total. So this guy rolls his 46 in order to try to hit me, and he rolled a bunch of 1s. It was actually kind of crazy. He rolled 3 1s as well as a 2. Now this guy has weapon skill too, so he's pretty deadly in close combat. So we did try to do a strike with his claw, but when he went to roll for wounding, he only rolled a 1, so he wasn't able to cause any wounds back to me. So I got really lucky on that part. Now as a drawback, I did try to counterattack, of course, because we're both in the equal fight phase. I was able to land any additional blows on him as well, even with my simple actions, so that part was kind of rough. However, my turn is up anyway, so because I do activate Lemonhead, it also activates Mondo as well. Lemonhead does try to attack back against Benjamin Marsh, but unfortunately for him, though, he wasn't able to land successful blows. But it took Mondo, though. Mondo actually charged in with an additional attack with his maul. So because he got 2 attacks, he managed to put the hurting on that guy as well. Managed to put a critical injury onto Benjamin Marsh as well. So because of that, at the end of the scenario, my friend has to make a really hard decision whether he wants to save this guy or else let him die. If I was him, though, I'd try to save him because Benjamin Marsh is pretty deadly with his backstab as well as infiltrate skills, so I got really lucky on that combat and chalked the first casualty for the Red Faction thanks to me. So, Scream of the Emo then activates Zadok Allen, who does a double movement towards the middle of the battlefield, towards the west superette. He's kind of being used as a bullet magnet, I think, to soak up my long-range fire, but at the same time, if anybody can take the damage, it's this guy, with his unstoppable skill as well as his high toughness and high wound count. I then get to go next after that, and realizing now because my opponent is so tucked away in the far left-hand corner, I have no line of sight whatsoever with Sorter or with Stubber. So because of that, I decided to move these guys. I use a double movement to use their drop rigs to drop them down to the ground level of the office building, and then move a normal movement, basic movement forward 5 inches towards those chemical tanks there next to the waterworks station in the center of the battlefield, just because I don't have any line of sight from where they're located at. What my plan is for these guys to do is to climb up either the top of the water tower there in the center of the battlefield or on the top of that wall, or go to the gantry walkway where Scorpion as well as Jockey located at, so that way they can lay down some suppressive fire from the right hand side, attacking from the left. And that's pretty much what I do for that activation. Scream of the Emo then activates Wilbur Whately, who also does a double movement forward, joining up right next to Zadok Allen in the middle of the battlefield, right in the front of the west superette. I then activate both Scorpion as well as Jockey next. Jockey tries to open fire with his auto rifle, but unfortunately for him though, he wasn't able to cause any damage. He did manage to hit, but not really much doing anything else. However, Scorpion opened up with his frag grenades, actually not with his frag grenades, opened up with the grenade launcher using a crack grenade and opening up directly onto Zadok Allen, nailing that guy straight in the center of mass. I managed to put 2 wounds on that guy as well as give an additional flush wound, so because of that, he's laying face down on the ground bleeding out, and he will need to roll up at the end phase to see exactly what happens to him for the recovery phase. Meanwhile, Scream of the Emo then activates Simon Black, who then in turn activates Pikmin as well as Arkham. And all 3 of those guys spend a double movement to move to the second floor of the Tower of Terror as well, taking some cover behind that little barricade right there in the center of the screen. They will have a -1 to hit against, but he actually didn't have a chance to hide with these guys because he spent double movements making them move up to the top of that walkway. I then activate Darkseid next. I spend both of his actions doing a double movement, moving along the length of the pylons of the gantry walkways above, taking cover there on the left-hand side, so that way he can start putting some pressure from the right-hand flank onto the Red Faction. And then Scream of the Emo activates Obin Marsh, and using his Commanding Presence ability as well as his cult icon, he activates Armitage, as well as Innsmouth, as well as Johansson. So all 4 of those guys do a double movement, moving towards the other side of the West Super Red, using it as cover so that way they don't get shot as they move across the battlefield. So in response, I activate Riptor, and using his Commanding Presence ability as well as his cult icon, I also activate Tetsuo, Reptile, Johnny, as well as VR. And I move them up their normal movement allowance just for basic movement, so that way they can start taking pot shots with their pistols directly at the 2 aberrants in the middle of the battlefield. Now what you guys need to remember is one of my territories I have is an Archaeotech device, is what I have from one of my territories. So because of that, I can put Blaze, Seismic, Shock, or Radphage effect on any one of my weapons. Now the drawback is, of course, if I have a roll I have to make an ammo test, it becomes an unstable ammo roll, which means if I fail, my guys will go out of action. But I decided to put that on my Juvies. So all 3 of my Juvies, Reptile, Tetsuo, and Johnny, all 3 of those guys have Radphage abilities on their weapons, and same thing with VR, I put Radphage ability on his 2 auto pistols as well. Riptor doesn't have it. And the reason why is because my rationale is if I lose any of these guys due to unstable rolls, due to ammo rolls, they're Juvies, I could afford to lose them because I could replace them with new ones. It seems kind of bitter to say it that way, but that's the truth. So that's the reason why I put that on there, because having the 4-up ability to issue out a flesh wound on a 4-up is just too priceless. So because of that, I concentrate fire with all 5 of my gangers indirectly into the 2 aberrants in the middle of the battlefield. In the end, I did manage to take out Wilbur Whately, managed to put an enfeebling injury on him, so because that he is -1 toughness. And the reason why I was able to do this is because I was able to flesh wound him out of action pretty much. Most of my shots from all 3 of my Juvies didn't really cause any damage. However, it was the Radphage ability to actually put 3 flesh wounds on him, which really helped out. Made him down to toughness 1. So then when I opened up with Riptor, opened up with VR directly onto Wilbur Whately, I was able to put him out of action directly. So because of that, VR nets himself 2 additional experience points for that one. So that part was kind of cool. So with the activation phase and action phase over with, we go directly to the end phase, and so my friend rolls recovery for Zadok Allen. As you can see in this photo, he's still laying on the ground bleeding out with his flesh wound. He's not really going much anywhere after that. So with the end phase over with, we go directly to the end of the turn. So here's an overhead shot of the entire battlefield at the end of turn number 1. As you can see, I'm starting to shift my forces over to the left-hand side to deal directly against the Red Faction. Meanwhile, the Red Faction is trying to advance forward along the Tower of Terror, as well as behind the West Super Red, using that shopping center as cover. And meanwhile, my forces are swarming to the right-hand side in order to start engaging those forces. So with the end of turn number 1 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and Scream of the Emo and I roll off for initiative to see who goes first. So that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2. The actually goes to me on this one. I managed to win the initiative. So because I do move up Riptor as well as my Juvie squad, they'll move up to recovering positions down the Rebel on the left-hand side with VR taking point, followed by Reptile as well as Johnny. And on the right-hand side behind that little barricade, I have Riptor as well as Tetsuo taking positions located there as well. And what I decided to do is actually have him open up fire with both Riptor as well as Tetsuo directly across the battlefield to the Tower of Terror. Unfortunately for me, Riptor missed his shots. However, when it came to Tetsuo, not only did he manage to hit, he also caused a serious injury. He managed to hit him 3 times actually with his rapid fire dice, actually only wounding him twice. So the first wound actually put him serious injury on him, so because of that, Arkham goes down, bleeding out. Also puts a flesh wound on that guy too for the second injury roll, and because that bullet has a Ravage ability, I rolled a 5 on my 4-up, so because of that, he's actually carrying twice as many flesh wounds. So Arkham's in a bad way right now, because if he rolls on the serious injury table, if he rolls another flesh wound, he goes automatically out of action. At the same time, our friend rolls out of action result, he also has to take a injury that way. So the best thing this guy can do is pretty much just lay on the ground and bleed, because that's all I can really do at this point. So right now I'm loving that Archaeotech device, and I love that Ravage ability for my Juvie's weapons. So in order to escape the field of fire, my friend Scream with the emo then activates Simon Black, who also activates Pikmin, and both those guys do a double movement directly to the 3rd floor of the Tower of Terror, so that way they don't get shot anymore by my guys on the ground level, which was actually kind of a smart move for him for the most part. However, that does put him within targeting distance for both Jockey as well as Scorpion, so I actually have activate Scorpion, and then also activates Reptile. Reptile fires first with his autogun, but he was able to cause any injuries or manage to hit anybody at that moment. However, Scorpion does take aim with his grenade launcher, firing a frag grenade directly at Pikmin. As you can see in this photo, the grenade launcher actually lands right in the middle between the two of them and actually manages to hit both of them with the blast template. Now, the blast template is only strength 3 because it is a frag grenade. However, Genestealer Cults, especially the hybrid acolyte, they only have a toughness of 3. Same thing with his neophyte hybrids, so I do have a 50-50 chance of wounding them. I do manage to wound Simon Black and put him down with an injury, with a serious injury, so because he's laying on the ground bleeding out, so he will need to roll up at the end phase to see exactly what happens to him. At the same time, I managed to blast Arkman off that floor. He fails his initiative test and actually falls to the next floor below, which he then passes his initiative test, so now he's back on the 2nd floor with Arkham. So because that Pikmin is just pinned, he's not taking any injuries, so he will have to spend an action to get back on his feet again in the next round, but all I can do at that point is either blind fire or move normal inches, so that part's kind of nice. So Scream of the Emo then activates Obed Marsh, and then also activates Armitage, as well as Innsmouth, as well as Johansson, and all 4 of those guys move normal 5 inches basic movement directly into the West Super Red as well, so that way they can start putting down some long-range fires with their weapons. For the most part, most of his fires are ineffective. Armitage misses his shot, same thing with Innsmouth, as well as with, I forgot that guy's name, Johansson. They basically miss their shots. However, Obed Marsh takes aim with all 3 of his stub pistols, stub guns, and opens up directly onto Tetsuo, and those rounds have dum-dum rounds. He actually managed to hit him twice as well as wound him twice as well. Luckily for me though, when they came up for the out of action roll, he ended up rolling a grievous injury, so because of that, Tetsuo goes directly into recovery for a turn, so that part's kind of nice. He also got a flesh wound for his 2nd injury, but because he was going out of action, we didn't spend time any bother putting down the tokens on that guy, so because of that, I do lose my first gang member for this fight. I then activate Stubber, who then also activates Sorter, so because I do double movements for them to climb to the top of that wall of the MCI Chemical Works, so I got some options there. From where they're standing on the top of that wall, they can shoot directly into the West Super Red in the next round, so I'm probably going to keep them right where they're at, so that way they can start shooting across the battlefield directly into the West Super Red and putting some pressure onto Scream of the Emo's forces there on the left-hand side. I then activate Darkseid, who does move up forward 5 inches right behind that barricade. I have him take aim with his Sonoff shotgun and fire it directly through the windows of the West Super Red, directly into Obed Marsh, which is the rival gang leader. So I do fire my shot, and I do manage to hit him, but because he has a scatter shot ability, I actually have to roll a d6 to see how many wound rolls I get, and I rolled 6 wound rolls. So when I managed to hit him, I actually wounded him 3 times, which is awesome. So I take away his 2 wounds and put him down for the count. 2 of the rolls came up as seriously injured, so he's laying on the ground bleeding out. And the 3rd one was actually a flesh wound, so because he's also -1 toughness now. So right off the bat, my opponent's gang leader is now laying on the ground bleeding out. Now luckily for him though, his neophyte hybrids who are located in that West Super Red, they all passed their cool checks, so they don't have to worry about breaking. But at the same time though, his leader is now down on the ground, and he will need to roll up on the injury table at the end of the scenario, at the end of the turn, to see exactly what happens to him. And for the very last bit of the action phase, I activate Lemonhead, who then also activates Mondo, and they do double movements along the gantry walkway along the base of to those pylons, so that way they can also start joining their brothers in the fight on the left-hand flank. So with the last of the action movement done with, we're all done with the action phase. We go directly to the top of the end phase. And because my opponent has one guy of action as well as so many who are now laying on the ground bleeding out, who are suffering serious injuries, he does have to take a bottle test. And unfortunately for him though, he fails his bottle test, which means now that at the beginning of the next turn, he'll need to take cool checks for all of his fighters to see if they stand their ground or whether they flee off the battlefield. And so that part was pretty awesome. When he rolls for Zadok Allen, he's still seriously injured, so all he's doing is laying on the ground bleeding out. And it's a really bad spot for him to be in because my plan is to charge in Dark Side so that way he can finish him off with the coup de grace and net himself some experience points as well as putting another enemy out of action. At the same time, Arkham rolls up on the serious injury. He rolls out of action, so because that he gets another head injury. That makes the second one for Arkham. So because that he takes another hit to his willpower as well as to his initiative stats, intelligence stats as well. What's his name? Simon Black does get back on his feet again because he has a flesh wound, and right now Pikmin's still on the ground because it's not the next round yet. And that pretty much makes up the bottom of turn number 2. So with turn number 2 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 3. So we go directly to the top at turn number 3, and I managed to get the initiative on this one once again. So I activate Stubber, then also activate Sorter as well. So because of that, I take both my Stubber as well as my long rifle. I have them open up on open fire across the battlefield towards the West Super Red. I do have Sorter aim first with his basic action, then fire, so that way he has a +1 bonus to hit. So that kind of takes away the -1 to hit against because Armitage, which is the Neo firearm with the mining laser, he's behind partial cover, so it's -1 to hit against him. But because I aimed, that mitigated that penalty. And Stubber, he just cuts loose with his heavy Stubber because that's all he can do because it's a double action to fire heavy weapons. So both those guys open up directly into the West Superette. Sorter does manage to hit as well as pin Armitage, so he's laying on the ground taking cover, and the other shot from Stubber managed to hit as well as pin Johansson. So because of that, both those guys are laying down. Now, they are still technically active, but they will have to spend a basic action to get back on their feet again, so that part's kind of nice. Meanwhile, Scream of the Evil then activates Simon Black, who actually does a basic action to go right behind the Tower of Terror to the back of it. He spends another basic action hiding because he's tired of this guy getting shot at all the time. In response, I said I keep on putting the pressure, and I charge directly Dark Side directly into Zadok Allen. He managed to finish him off with the coup de grace. So needless to say, Zadok Allen does go out of action. He suffers a humiliating injury as a result of that. So because he has -1 to his cool as well as to his leadership score, and also netting additional experience point for Dark Side. So that part was kind of cool. Screw of the Evil then activates Innsmouth, who opens fire with his auto pistol directly into Dark Side, but unfortunately for him though, he missed his shot. I think he managed to roll 2 hits, but both his hits I think rolled a 1 and a 2, so because of that his shots go wide, it doesn't really cause much of anything at this point. I then activate Riptor, who then activates Johnny, Reptile, as well as VR at the same time, and I have them move their normal moon allowance over to the left-hand side, so that way they can go around the corner and start shooting. Reptile as well as VR have line of sight, while Johnny as well as Riptor do not, but at the same time, I'm just trying to put some pressure there and try to finish off these Genestealer Cultists once and for all. I believe Reptile's shot goes wide, but it was VR who managed to put another flesh wound directly onto Innsmouth as well. Managed to hit him twice as well as cause 2 flesh wounds, so because he's now laying on the ground seriously injured and bleeding out, which is a really bad spot for him to be in because if I charge in with my Juvies, I can finish him off with a coup de grace too quick. In response, Scream of the Evil then activates Pikmin, who then actually spends a basic movement going around the corner of the Tower of Terror and spending another basic action to go into hiding so that way he doesn't get shot at anymore. I then respond with both Lemonhead as well as Mondo, activating both of them, and they're moving their double movement allowance to the left hand. Sorry, not the double movement allowance. They moved over their normal movement allowance around the corner so that way they can open fire with their auto guns. Unfortunately for me, their auto gun shots do miss. However, my friend then activates Armitage as well, who then gets back on his feet to open fire with his mining laser. Now, unfortunately for him, because he's blind firing, because he's just getting up from being pinned, he has to roll a 6 or more in order to hit. Unfortunately for him, though, he didn't land that roll at all. So because that Dark Side is completely fine as the mining laser goes wide at that point. I then activate both Scorpion as well as Jockey. They both move their normal moon allowance forward and then go spend another basic action to put those guys in hiding so that way they don't get shot at because they're kind of exposed right there in the middle of the gantry walkway. And finally, Scream of the Evil then activates Johansson, who gets back on his feet again. And since he's blind firing once again, he has to roll 6s to hit. He opens up with his auto gun directly into into Reptile. But unfortunately for him, though, he wasn't able to land the shot. So because of that, nothing really much happens from there. So with the action phase over with, we'll go directly to the bottom of the end phase for this turn. Ben Marsh managed to get back on his feet again. He does carry 2 flesh wounds now, so because of that, he's only toughness 1. But at the same time, though, this guy is super deadly. He's got 3 pistols that can still shoot, and he's also pretty deadly that way as well, so I do have to worry about that. But as an added bonus though, Innsmouth is still laying on the ground seriously injured, which means the next turn I can charge somebody in and then finish him off with a coup de grace, and then hopefully, charge up and engage the rest of his guys in close combat. So with the end phase over with, we go directly to the top at turn number 4 and we roll for initiative to see who goes first. And it's this point that my friend Screaming Emo decides to call the game because he realizes he's losing too many guys. He doesn't want to lose any more than he already has to. So because of that, he decides to call it quits at this point. And Cawdor manages to steal the initiative of the win on this first half of our campaign, beating the unbeatable Red faction. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the after action report and talk about the post game for both gangs because this battle report is now officially over. Alright, so starting with the Red faction with the injuries. They had 4 injuries. Benjamin Marsh suffered a critical injury, and normally he would die, but because they have a rogue doc on the payroll, they went to Old Waitley, who then patched him up instead, so because of that, Benjamin Marsh suffers a head injury instead. He goes directly into recovery and loses 1 point to his intelligence as well as to his willpower. Zadok Allen, like we said before, suffered a humiliating injury, so he has -1 to his cool and his leadership. Wilbur Waitley suffered an enfeebling injury, has -1 to his toughness. And then Arkham, he suffers a second head injury, so because of that, he loses additional intelligence as well as an additional willpower point for his stats. For advancements, my friend Screaming even didn't have any advancements at this time, so nobody leveled up. From his territories, he has 4 of them. From his settlement, he got 1 point of reputation as well as 20 creds. From his mining works, he got 2 points of reputation as well as 20 creds. From his rogue dock shop, he ended up saving Benjamin Marsh, stabilizing him with a head injury instead of death. And from his refuge drift, he earned 45 credits. For reputation, he earns 1 point of reputation from his settlement, 2 from his mining works, as well as 1 reputation for fighting against the jury for the very first time, but because he bottled out, he loses that point. That brings his grand total to 22 points of reputation in total, which means he's the current leader right now in our campaign still, even though he lost. From the merchants, he earned 5 credits from the scenario, as well as 85 credits from his territory, as well as 10 credits from his stash. When combined together, he had 100 credits total. And what he decided to do this time is purchase autoguns, is what he decided to do. He purchased autoguns for Benjamin Marsh, Simon Black, Pickman, Innsmouth, as well as Arkham. So now he has all long-range attacks for his shooters now. He also purchased an auto pistol for Armitage as well. And then he placed the remaining 15 credits that he had left from that and put inside of his stash for next time. His new record now is at 3 wins as well as 1 loss, and his new gang rating now is at 1,695 points. Now for my gang, the Jury. When it came to injuries, the only injury I had was Tetsuo, who suffered a grievous injury, so he goes directly into recovery. For my advancements, I actually had 4 guys who leveled up on this battle report. Stubber earned +1 to his ballistic skill. Mondo and VR both earned +1 to their toughness, so now they're toughness for Cawdor gangers, which is pretty awesome. And then Darkside also leveled up, earning +1 to his cool. For my territories, I originally started off with 4 territories. My settlement, I got 1 reputation added to that, as well as 30 credits. I also recruited a brand new ganger named Zero, is what I decided to name him as well. For my ruins, I collected 20 credits from my old ruins, as well as 5 credits from my slag furnace, and once again my Archaeotech device, I decided to activate it again to put the Radiphage ability on my Juvies as well as VR one more time. And at the end of this scenario, I actually managed to capture another territory, and this time it was another settlement. So because I'm now rocking 2 settlements, and my second settlement earned me another point of reputation as well as 20 credits. For my reputation, I earned 2 points of reputation for the scenario, as well as 1 point of reputation for fighting against the Red faction for the very first time. I also earned 2 points of reputations for my 2 settlements, bringing my grand total of reputation to 18 points. At the merchants, I earned 40 credits from the scenario, 75 credits from my territories, netting me a grand total of 115 credits. I purchased a pole-arm autogun for my newly recruited ganger Zero, which I got from my settlement. I then hired another ganger, named him Mad Teddy, and I purchased a pole-arm blunderbuss for him as well. And then also purchased for my last 10 credits a drop rig for Scorpion. My new gang record now is at 4 wins as well as 0 losses, and my new gang rating now is at an even 1,600 points. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. You guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest news of our hobby. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.